Chapter 12 of Nip and Tuck by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 12. Tuck overhears something not intended for his ears, which leads to a big deal in Chesapeake and Fairleigh stock. It was a dark November morning a few minutes after 7 that the Mountain Express on the Erie Road rolled into the station in Jersey City, and George Tuck, with a small grip in his hand, stepped off on the platform and hurried down to the Chambers Street ferry slip. The boat was not in yet, so the boy walked leisurely toward the end of the slip and finally sat down in the lee of one of the spiles. He had been up to Montgomery, in Orange County, to attend to the wedding of an old friend, and had boarded the express at Goshen. While looking across the cold stretch of the misty river, he heard the steps and voices of two men approaching. They did not observe his presence in the gloom which enveloped the ferry slip, and paused close behind him. To their eyes there did not seem to be anyone within earshot. "Well, how did you succeed, Dexter?" said one of the men in a low tone which seemed to have a familiar intonation for Tuck. He thought he had heard it before, and, as it turned out, he was not mistaken. "Fine," was the reply. "I saw Judge Benson, and just as I thought, he's an old classmate of mine. That made things easier." "Well?" said his companion impatiently. "I found that 2 of the 5 judges are against the road, and that Benson himself has not yet come to the decision. Practically, he's still on the fence." "Cut it short," growled the other. "Did you make him see matters in the right light?" "I did," replied his companion, "but it'll cost you and your friends $10,000, Mr. Savage." "Broker Savage. I thought I knew that voice," was the reflection which passed through Tuck's mind when he heard the name uttered. "You shall have the money." "All right, I thought you'd agree, so I arranged to telegraph him the sum before 11 this morning." "You did right. You are certain, then, that this decision will go in the favor of the Chesapeake and Fairleigh?" "Yes, sir. He will hand down a written opinion against the Virginia Oil and Iron Company at 2 tomorrow." "Good. The railroad will then get complete control of the property." "I'm sure they will." "Unless—" "Unless what?" demanded Savage impatiently. "They carry the case to the Supreme Court of the United States." "You think the coal company will do that?" "I think it likely they will." "No matter. The decision will be of immense value to us just now in any case. I have an option on 20,500 shares of C&F at 16.5 with Bloodgood Shipley and Company, which expires at 10:30 tomorrow. This is the block of stock I told you Duncan Jarrett has been trying to get a hold of so long, but could not. It would have given him the control of the road, but it will now do that for the opposition. I shall be elected president, and one of the schemes of my life will be realized." "I congratulate you, Mr. Savage. As for my fee of the service I have rendered to you, I leave that to the generosity of the gentleman composing the clique," said the lawyer, rubbing his cold hands briskly together. "You shall be suitably rewarded, Mr. Dexter. Take my word for it." "Thank you. Of course you'll lose no time in taking up that option," suggested the lawyer. "It wouldn't do for that stock to slip through your fingers now." "No fear of that. If I should happen to be a few minutes late, Bloodgood will wait. He knows me, and the price closed this afternoon at 15 7/8. There'll be nothing doing in C&F until after the decision is known, so we are safe enough." "I dare say you know best." "Well, here comes the boat. You'll dine with me, of course, Mr. Dexter?" The ferry boat bumped against the slip, and after the passengers had landed, Mr. Dexter and Broker Savage brushed past the indistinguishable form of George Tuck and boarded the boat. Tuck, observing that they crossed to the ladies' saloon, took the men's side so as to avoid a possible recognition. "This looks like a case of bribery, unless I'm much mistaken," muttered Tuck to himself. "I shall have to see Mr. Jarrett. If I could only forestall Mr. Savage and prevent him getting possession of that block of stock, I should be doing my wealthy patron a favor he will probably remember to my credit and advantage. But I'm afraid Mr. Savage will be on hand bright and early to take up his option." Next morning at 10 o'clock he was at Duncan Jarrett's office, only to learn that the gentleman was out of town, and no one in the office could say just when he might be expected to return. "Too bad," mused Tuck as he descended the steps to the sidewalk. "I guess I'll go over to Bloodgood's and see if Savage has taken up his option. It's nearly 11 o'clock. So Tuck crossed Wall Street and entered the office of his former boss. "Hello, Tuck." said Bloodgood genially as the boy broker was ushered into his private room. "How is business? I can't complain. Made your fortune yet?" the broker inquired with a smile. "Not yet," grinned Tuck. "I'm shy about $600,000 of my first million yet." "Do you mean to say that you're worth $400,000? asked Bloodgood in astonishment. "Yes, and 10 or 12,000 over." "You don't seem to have lost much time since you left our employ." "I don't think I lost much time while I was in your employ either." "No, Tuck, you were one of our gilt-edged clerks. We were sorry to lose you, but our loss seems to be your gain. Can I do anything for you this morning?" "I don't know, Mr. Bloodgood. Unless you can sell me some Chesapeake and Fairleigh, I should like to get a hold of about 20,000 shares." "Should you indeed? Well, I have a block of 20,500 in which I have sold an option expiring today. I expect a gentleman at any moment after them." "Then the option hasn't expired yet?" "Yes, it expired half an hour ago, but I always like to give a man a chance." "Most brokers would be apt to take on a new customer if one appeared after the time limit had passed." "That's right enough," nodded Bloodgood. "But the option calls for 16.5, and the last quotation was 16, so you see it'll pay me to give my client a chance to come to the front if he wants the stock badly enough to pay the fraction. I've this advantage. I've got the only large block of C&F on the market." "Well, Mr. Bloodgood, I want those shares badly enough to be willing to pay you 16.75 for the lot. The option having run out, why not close with me? It's spot cash." "That certainly alters the situation. The stock is yours, Tuck." "Deliver it at my office. It'll be paid for just as soon as I can get the money from the bank." "I'll run over to your bank with you and make the exchange there. Where do you deposit?" "At Treadwell and Company." "All right. That's only a step." He rang his bell. "Tell Mr. Lynch to bring me those shares of Chesapeake and Fairleigh on which the option had just expired," he said to his office boy, who answered the summons. Just as the envelope containing the stock was placed in his hands, Broker Savage was announced. He followed close on the office boy's heels and came face to face with Tuck, who had started to leave the private office the moment he heard who the visitor was. Broker Savage scowled darkly when he recognized the boy, brushed rudely by him, and addressed himself to Mr. Bloodgood. "I'll take that Chesapeake and Fairleigh stock now, Bloodgood," he said in his customary brusque way. "I'm afraid you're too late, Savage," answered Bloodgood, evidently prepared for a ruction, for he knew the man he was dealing with. "Too late? What do you mean?" "Your option expired 3/4 of an hour ago. If you had come any time up to 10 minutes ago, you could have had the stock. As it happens, I've just sold the block." "Sold the block?" roared Savage. "You have sold that stock?" "Yes, Mr. Savage, I sold it at 1/4 of a point advance on your offer." "Thunder and lightning!" howled the stout broker so furiously that his voice could be heard out to the reception room. "Who'd you sell it to?" "Mr. George Tuck." "Tuck! Tuck! I don't know any broker by that name," snorted Savage. "You passed him this moment you came in here." "Do you mean that boy?" asked the broker contemptuously. "I do. That is George Tuck, one of our most successful young brokers." "Rot!" retorted Mr. Savage rudely. "He purchased the stock for $343,375 cash." "Do you expect me to believe that fiction, sir?" "I am not accustomed to lying in matters of business, Mr. Savage," replied Broker Bloodgood sternly, thoroughly disgusted with the uncouth behavior of his visitor. Savage regarded him with a furious glare. Then he blurted out, "This is a put-up job." "Are you aware, sir, that your language is insulting?" "You might have waited an hour at least," snarled Savage. "You know who I am. I contracted to take that stock, and I intended to do so." "How could I tell that, when you failed to call on time, Mr. Savage? The stock was quoted on the ticker an hour ago at 16, which is 1/2 point lower than your option called for. Might I not reasonably presume by your failure to appear at 10:30 that you did not intend to pay that extra $half a share, which on the 20,500 shares amounts to over $10,000? According to the rules, I was in no way bound to hold the stock a moment after 10:30 if I found a customer for it. As it happened, Mr. Tuck came in here and asked me if I had any of the stock. He offered me 16 3/4, and I sold it to him. That's all there is to it." Mr. Savage turned on his heel and walked out into the reception room, followed by Mr. Bloodgood, after he had put his hat and coat on. End of chapter 12.